One, two, three.
Military budgets are skyrocketing across the globe, while funding for social needs, housing, healthcare, and education, is being slashed. Politicians often justify this skewed spending by claiming it creates jobs. But what if the people doing those jobs had a say in how public money was used? 50 years ago, workers at Lucas Aerospace, a UK military contractor, designed a visionary proposal known as the Lucas Plan, a worker-led alternative focused on socially useful production rather than weapons of war. In our special report, The Lucas Plan at 50, a radical investment in society, not the war machine, Laura spoke with Brian Salisbury, a former Lucas Aerospace shop steward and one of the voices behind that groundbreaking effort. He comes from a proud family of Lucas workers. His father worked there for over 40 years. He himself worked for the company for 22 years at the Birmingham plant. At 90 years old today, he says, at a time when there's a lack of political alternative narrative to neoliberalism, the opportunity to put forward a response from the bottom up is essential, given the direction of travel by those in power on either side of the Atlantic. What follows is the full, uncut conversation with Brian, rich with lessons for today's movement for climate justice, peace, and economic democracy.
Had you been very active before you came to Lucas Aerospace?
No, I came out of the forces in 1960, out of the Royal Air Force, and my father works at Lucas Aerospace, and he said there was a possibility of a job there. So I got a job in the metallurgical laboratory as a technician in 1960. I wasn't involved in trade unions. I didn't really know too much about them. I came out of a house which was probably more politically conservative than Labour.
So what was it? What were the conditions that led to the rise for need for something like the Lucas Plan?
It was because we were losing jobs. The workforce numbers were, when Lucas Aerospace was organised, got together, if you like. It was an amalgamation of a number of companies, and Lucas Industries, which was the parent company of Lucas Aerospace, managed to get £3 million from the government to reorganise the aircraft aerospace components industry, bringing together a number of companies, and that formed Lucas Aerospace. It was on 11 different sites, geographical sites, and what it meant was, we always said it involved the 3 R's: reorganisation, rationalisation, and redundancy. Those were the 3 R's that, as the workforce, we recognised. And bringing those 3 companies together, the first thing they wanted to do was to rationalise the workforce, to cut out the products and cut out the people they didn't want. And the workforce went down from 18,000 down to 12,000. So although we'd organised ourselves through the Combined Shop Stewards Committee, which represented all the unions across all the sites, and although we'd organised ourselves in that way, and we'd fought off compulsory redundancy, there was natural wastage taking place. Jobs were not being filled when people left, and that meant that skills were being removed from the workplace and from the community, and opportunities for young people were not being made available because those jobs not being filled. So we were concerned about that, and it coincided with the election of the Labour government in 1974. And it was a radical manifesto, really was a radical manifesto. But one of the things they were saying was they're going to try and get rid of defence jobs. They're going to shift towards the social side. So that meant that there was more pressure on us from the point of view of the numbers employed in Lucas Aerospace. So we thought and there was some suggestion that the aerospace industry was going to be nationalised. And although we got reservations about nationalisation, because it's not always the best thing for people, we thought we would have a better chance of maintaining the workforce if we could put pressure on the government rather than the employers. So we went to see the Secretary of State for Industry, Charlie Benn, and to his credit, he met us. That's unusual for government ministers or Secretary of State to meet the shop stewards, but he was that kind of man. He believed in democracy in the workplace and democracy in the community and democracy overall. And at that meeting, it was he who suggested, when we presented the argument about what was happening to Lucas from a worker's point of view, that he suggested we come up with a plan of our own.
So you find yourself eventually at Wortley Hall. Can you remember having that meeting, what it was like, what brought you there?
Yes, I mean, we got a problem on reducing the workforce. And the other problem now we were faced with the fact that a senior government minister was saying to us, well, okay, if you're not happy with what the company's saying, you come up with a plan. So that was a challenge to us in a way. And then, I mean, we could have gone back and said, well, let's chase up more military contracts, or, because the company weren't particularly efficient in chasing up contracts or any other contracts, we could have said that. But no, that's when we had that big debate on what we should put forward as a plan. And it came out as a result of that we were saying, we started to think not only just as producers, but as consumers as well. I mean, you go there, you go to your workplace to get as much money as you possibly can. And if the company does something that you're not happy about, you resist it. Or strike action or whatever action. And we'd done all that, you see. But now we were talking about putting forward an alternative. And that was a different move, which really had to change our mindset in a way to think about both as producers and consumers. And we could see the contradictions that were happening. That, as I said, in Birmingham, what we made was the fuel systems for the aircraft. The pumps and the control units, and they were sophisticated pieces of equipment, machinery. But at the same time, there were people, elderly people in the community, dying as a result of being cold. And there wasn't the simple, cheap heating systems that they could use. So that was we could produce all this sophisticated stuff. So why can't we produce something which is socially useful? It answers the needs of people. I mean, what we were making answered the needs of those who are profiting from it. So why shouldn't we do that, you see? So that we saw that as a contradiction of what the market provided and what was actually needed by people. And the other contradiction we saw was on one of the one of the sites, on the Neasden site, in London, there was producing kidney dialysis machines. And they were talking about getting rid of that. They didn't see that as so much profit making as they would the aerospace side, you see. So what we said was, there's people out there, if they were being rationed. The dialysis machine were being rationed. Anybody over a certain age and under a certain age wasn't having access to it. So we said, that's not right. That's a real contradiction. It's not answering social need. Again, the company's chasing profits at the expense of people's lives. And those were the sort of contradictions we began to encounter. And that's why we came up with a plan which identified, and we brought into the equation, the socially useful products.
And I understand that you all drew up the plan at Wortley Hall. Is that right?
Yes, we drew up the plan at Wordley Hall. But that's where we had our regular meetings. When we went back from the Tiny Bed meeting, we had to meet up and make that decision to draw up an alternative plan. As I say, we identified the contradictions that existed within society and put the plan together on the basis of that, and saying that we should use our skills and technology to answer social need, identifying different products, but also identifying the fact that the way we were structured within the workplace, that we were being de-skilled because of Taylorism, that and also the introduction of new technology. So we were questioning all of the way the, if you like, the normal economy, the capitalist economy operated. And so not only we were suggesting products, but we were challenging the norm of the economic norm. And by involving the workforce, as we did, in identifying the products which matched their skills and technology, we were also taking on the democracy within the workplace, that we were saying that the workers themselves knew more about the business than the people who were running Lucas Aerospace. And taking into account that the man who was the general manager of Lucas Aerospace, his CV included being a general manager of the factory which produced Mars bars. We were justified in saying that we knew more about the place than they did. He confessed himself he didn't know anything about engineering, but he was there just to make to do a job, to rationalise.
What happened to the plan?
What happened to the plan? Well, it received nationwide and international recognition. It did, because, as I say, it was not only sort of challenging the system that existed, but it was also visionary, in as much that the products that were being suggested answered the needs not only in the 70s, but now. When you think about the fact that we were talking about heat pumps, they're now being promoted as being the answer to some of the environmental problems. Hybrid cars, which manufacturer don't produce hybrid cars? We were suggesting those sort of things. A road rail vehicle we were talking about. I saw a video the other day of one being used in Australia. And medical equipment we were talking about. You know, so we were challenging the sort of economic and democracy norm, but also visionary in suggesting the products that we did. So it received national and international recognition. The Labour Party took it on as their policy to support it. So really, you know, we looked as though we were in a strong position. I mean, the Secretary of State for Industry had told us the previous plan, and we produced it, and he praised it to high heaven, as you've probably seen. But also we were invited abroad. I went to Sweden twice. I went to Germany, and then after I'd left Lucas Aerospace, I went to America. I went to America and did that peace tour. I gave you the information on. So it was received well.
Except not by.
And it's still been received well.
It wasn't received well by Lucas Aerospace.
Well, Lucas Aerospace wouldn't accept it, would they? Eh? They wouldn't accept it because we were a direct challenge to them. We were a direct challenge to them. You know, we wouldn't expect them to expect it. But we were expecting the government to accept it and act upon it. And we expected the full-time trade union officials to act upon it as well. And we've got letters since, in the last couple of years or so, letters which have been sent through to us from people who worked in the personnel department showing what the Lucas management did when they received the plan. The first thing they did was contact the trade union officials and said, what about this? And most of the unions said they felt that the Combine Committee, because it was a grassroots committee, workplace-based committee, representing all the workforce, all the unions, was a challenge to their own organisations because everyone was an individual agreement with the company. And some of them were outright opposition to what we were doing. So we were, and of course, what happens, you know, they just carried on as normal.
How many years later is this now, and why do you think it's...
Well, it went on. The plan was introduced in 1976. We had the meeting with Ben in 74. We got the plan together by 76. You know, a lot of detail went into it, a lot of involvement with the workforce. And from 76, we hadn't got a redundancy on at that time, but we knew what was coming down the line. And we went through the motions of trying to get the plan implemented between 76 and eventually when the company came back and said they were going to bring in redundancy. And they were going to get 2,000 people redundant at that time. That's what they wanted to do. And as a means of bringing about or solving the problem of being recognised as an official body, because that was what the company had been talking about all along. We were not an official body. And the unions mainly were backing up that argument as well. They got us involved with the officials, and the officials organised a delegate meeting, and 14 of us were nominated by the other shop stewards attending that meeting to form a working party to examine what the company was saying with regard to the 2,000 employers. And as a 14-man body, it was all men in those days, Mind you, there was women's shop stewards, but they weren't involved in the combine. I'll just say that. But we'd always got representation from Hillary and representation from Kate's, which I haven't spoke about. That was absolutely essential support for us. The attracting money from
What did it stand for something, Kate?
Kate's was Centre for Alternative Industrial Technological Systems. And it was there to provide support for us and other trade union shop stewards to talk about workers' plans and socially useful technology, human-centred technology. And it was an essential tool for us from the point of view of research and also from the point of view of product development.
What was Hillary's role?
Hillary's role from the start was supportive when she knew about what we were up to, and as a consequence, she and Dave Elliott wrote that book about the plan and what we were doing. So the 14-man committee went round all of the sites, all the Lucas Aerospace sites, questioned the managers and talked to the shop stewards there about what the company was saying about reducing the workforce by 2,000. And as a consequence of that, we produced this argument against what the company was saying. We destroyed their argument. That's what we did. But the problem was, because officials were involved, there was this sort of establishment get-together of the officials, government ministers, who listened to the officials, and the management. And we were shunted to one side. And they came up with the compromise, as they always do. And the compromise was that we wouldn't be losing so many jobs. I think we saved 500 jobs, or they saved 500 jobs. The government gave the company £8 million. So it was back to square one. It was the way things were always done, and the way things are done now. I mean, I could talk about the amounts of money that's from the taxpayer that goes to companies. It was happening then. Lucas were making profits of over 200 million. Lucas Industries, that's the parent company, and they were paying as little as, I think it was about £400,000 in tax. There was this system of deferred taxes, 179 million, which was written off. So, and I go off at a tangent here, but there's somebody named Farnsworth, I think, at York University, talks about corporate welfare. We talk about social welfare, and that's a big issue at the moment with the cuts to social welfare. But nobody talks about corporate welfare and how much money goes into companies. So much money goes into companies that's from the taxpayer. And as he came out with, the companies privatised profits and socialised losses.
That's one of the Noam Chomsky's great lines.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, he said it anyway as well. I'm sure other people have said it.
Hi, it's Laura. Independent media is a collaborative project, and you play a critical part in it. This show is made possible by our viewers and listeners, not corporations or advertisers. So join our member supporter honor roll by going to lauraflanders.org/donate to contribute. That's lauraflanders.org/donate. And please stay kind, stay curious, and commit to supporting this no ads, no gimmicks, not all about profit show, again, or for the very first time. Thank you.
And a reminder to hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you. Now back to our full Uncut conversation.
But that's part of what makes this also relevant today. Why do you think it's still important to talk about today? Something like the Lucas plan.
Because Based upon my long experience, I know that the market-led economy won't solve the problems that we've got from the point of working class people's interests. They won't solve the climate crisis. They're not making a move in that direction because the fossil fuel industry is very profitable. They won't stop the forever wars, as I call it, because the defence industry is very profitable. And they won't solve the low-cost crisis for ordinary working people because of the way neoliberalism, ultimate capitalism without much regulation and destroying the unions and whatever, the market-led economy doesn't work for the interests of working class people. While we've got more food banks here than McDonald outlets, and while we've got billionaires making millions and billions daily, there's a time for a redistribution of wealth. So what have we got left? It's only ordinary working people. If they get organised within the community and the workplace, will bring about change. We've got nothing else. We're the ones that create the wealth. We're the ones that care for the community. So it'll have to be from there. Now, how does that happen? Now, that's a difficult situation. Back in the 70s, everything was geared up for us being successful. Everything was geared up. The manifesto, they were going to give more power to working people. They were going to cut the defence budget and shift money into social use. But it didn't happen. We lost. We didn't lose, they lost for us. That's what we say. So if you compare then to now, it's altogether different. It's a different situation. It's more difficult now. And if I may, I can compare sort of workers' plans, if you like. One, you've got the GKN, what's going on in Italy, okay? Where because Melrose, an acid stripping company, trying to close the factory, and they've taken it over for 3 years. They've run it as a cooperative, making cargo bikes and solar panels. Doing a good job, marvellous job. And we as ex-Combine people are putting money into that, buying shares to support them. So that's one way a workers' plan is operating. Now, another GKN outlet was in Birmingham, where I came from. And they put together a workers' plan. They were closing. Melrose, again, was closing them down. 500 workers were there. And they produced a workers' plan. Supported by the local MP, Labour MP. But company, Melrose, they decided they wanted to close it, and they wanted to close it. And that brings into question the power relationships between workers and the management. And my argument is that possibly if we'd have had worker representation on the board, we would have probably got our plan implemented. And if the GKN workers in Birmingham had got workers on the board, the power relationship would have changed, and they would have probably got their plan implemented. But that's not the case. So they lost in a way. But one thing they did do, they achieved an extra so many pounds in the redundancy payments. So you could say that by producing the workers' plan, it was another sort of means by which they could put some leverage on the owners to get more money out of them. That was the
Increase the pressure a little bit.
that was better than yes. But you have got this problem of the power relationship. The wealth creators don't have that same influence on the board as the shareholders or the community. It should be a three-way thing, I think. Workers, shareholders, community, to interest. The community lose out, not only the workers. All the ancillaries, the cafes and everything else closed. If they take away their main people who go there after they've had the wages and whatever. And now another example of a workers' plan that did work during the pandemic. The government had a problem. They hadn't got the equipment. They didn't prepare for the pandemic, and people were dying. The lack of ventilators, and they wanted 15,000 more ventilators. So the government put out a challenge, the ventilator challenge, to industry, and companies responded. And Airbus workers, in all organised within Unite, the union, worked day and night and produced those ventilators within 12 weeks. Now, why did that happen? Because the government needed it, okay, politically. The management saw that they couldn't be selling, that these were people who usually manufacture aircraft wings, Airbus, and they were not selling the parts because the aircraft industry had gone, because there wasn't so many people flying and whatever. And the third thing, the workers produced it. So there was the unions produced it. So the management and the government got together. So when you've got that power relationship, when you've got the three of them together, there's no problem about workers' plans. And that's the point that I like to make.
And it does put pressure on workers to think positively about what might be a better plan than what exists. One of my questions to you, and I think we're near the end, is, you say it's up to us. You say it's up to sort of we the people, the workers, to come together to make these sorts of changes. There's a lot of people right now who might be like you were when you first came into work, when you were first out of the Air Force. Don't think that much about it. They just want a job. And if they did think about it, they would think, well, how can we possibly influence the situation where you have, a man like Elon Musk running a company like the way he does and being the richest person in the world, and the media seem to love him. And now he's bought himself a presidency. Even though he doesn't support unions, even though he isn't great.
Quite the opposite.
And he blows up things and people die. People feel a bit like the balance is impossible. So what's the point? So my question to you is, how has this been for your life? How is being involved like this? What's it done for you? What's your life been like? And would you recommend this kind of life of struggle?
Thing, as I say, it's different, completely different now to what it was. I mean, you've painted a bleak picture, and I can't agree with that. And my son always talks about me as probably his father. He's still living in the 70s. He talks about the realistic situation now is that time has moved on and places are not unionised so it is difficult. But as I said, that we talked about the pandemic, that people did come together then. People do come together and try and help each other. The working class do help each other, and I don't know. I just think we're at a. I mean, as I say, I'm writing this analysis of what's the best way forward, and I think there's going to be, I would hope, political change. I think there could be a realignment of politics. I think that's certainly the case in the UK. That they're seeing that this new Labour government is not doing any more than what the Conservative government did. It's still going along with neoliberalism and attacking the elderly and the disabled to, be fiscal responsible. That's what their mantra is. So it is difficult, but I think there are. My argument is that there's considerable opposition out there. You get the different organisations, groups, but the opposition is fragmented at the moment. Like, you get Greenpeace, or you get other organisations. They just pursue their own particular area. They get you to sign a petition, or they ask you to donate, or they ask you to join them, but they don't join together. And my argument is that there's three problems, if you like, we face, which is about the forever wars, the climate crisis, and the low cost of living. They're all of the same problem, really, and that if, like in the Lucas workers, there should be a combination of organisations that are trying to change the narrative. So I think it's going to be a combination of the thinkers, if you like, who've got this sort of years of being involved in these organisations, coming together, recognising that there is a common problem. It's got to be an alternative narrative. There isn't at the moment. It's fragmented. And if you're coming together to bring together a framework of aims, some of them short term, some of them more longer term, because I think some of the problems that are faced by both UK and America are long term. That the point I pointed out about the economy that operates at the moment is based on the fact that the bottom line and the profit. Okay, it doesn't always meet social criteria. Okay, and also democracy. The democracy, I don't think, is, if you're voting every 5 years or every 4 years in America, it's not the answer. These people, you put them into power and they ignore what the opinion polls are saying at the time or whatever. They just, so from a democratic point of view and from an economic point of view, it doesn't represent the interests of working class people. So we have to get another narrative out there which does work in the interest of working people and also in the interest of the environment internationally. That's what I'm saying. That's what I think ought to be. There ought to be these opposing forces to neoliberalism coming together, along with, at the same time, activity from the grassroots. So if you like, you're getting the thinkers, intellectuals, whatever you want to say about them, or have they got this, they've had a history of knowing all the facts, because industrialists they won't answer the problems, not within that economy. They're operating within that economy, and also the politicians. They're operating on a very short time scale. That's what they are. They're hoping to get. As somebody said to me the other day, they're getting the worst things out of the way at the moment, and in 5 years' time, people have forgotten that, and they'll be bringing out a few tax cuts and things like that to get elected again. So they don't act in the interests of working class people.
Personally, you're 90 years old. You started by saying you're 90. Are you glad you got involved in this Lucas plan struggle?
Yeah. My political development coincided with my involvement in the trade union movement and getting involved in the Combine Shop Stewards Committee, meeting all these people from the different sites, from the different unions, people like Mike Cooley, Ernest Scarborough, Phil Asquith, all these people that got this knowledge, and the contribution they could make made me feel like this.
you recommend to a young person to get involved the way you do?
Well, if they don't, if they're going to leave it to the politicians, if they're going to leave it to the market-led economy, it'll only get worse. It's got worse since the 70s. It hasn't got better. Yeah, I always saw the 70s as a crossroads. It could have gone either way. It was at a time when there was the Upper Clyde shipbuilding working. 200 factories were occupied by working people. The Meriden Co-op, when the Triumph collapsed, Triumph motorcycle collapsed. What we were doing, Lucas, so we weren't the only ones. It was a time of real sort of unrest from the grassroots, if you like. And instead of the Labour government taking advantage of that and shifting the balance of power to working people, they missed that opportunity. And once the Labour government was defeated in 79, Thatcher came in, along Reaganomics, and neoliberalism was born, where they, destroyed the unions, if you like, destroyed the manufacturing base that we got in this country.
Are we at another turning point like that now, do you think?
I think we are getting to a point politically where there could be some realignment. If we don't, UK will go along the same path as the States. Trump is there now. Farage is waiting in the sidelines here, reform UK. If Labour fail, as they are failing, and the opinion polls are showing this, reform are on the move up. So unless there is that, realignment, and I mean, you've got Corbyn with his independent alliance, I think they call it, five of them in Parliament. That could be the basis of it. People on the street. There needs to be that. And there's not much evidence of that happening, only on particular issues like, the Palestinian issue, or, which is right, that should be out there, my thoughts, and individual issues rather than a lot, as I see it. I should learn a lesson from what we did in the Combine, because we brought together all trade unionists from all sections of the company, shop floor up to senior designers, all unionised. And by combining, and that wasn't easy, it took a long time for the Combine to get really organised. It took 6 years before it was organised, because of the difference, like the management play one set of work against another. You've got senior designers sitting down with people from the shop floor. You've got the foreman off the shop floor sitting down with the people they usually managed. And they cast that aside and looking at the bigger picture of, what affected them all, whether it was pensions, the introduction of new technology, or whether it was redundancy. So really, I mean, I see environmentalists. There's an environmentalist I know who talks about throwing more weapons in the way of Ukraine and keeping the war going there. And I can't understand that, because the environmental problems could be created as a result of that. I think there's going to be a coming together. I hope there will be. I wouldn't be sitting here doing this with you if I didn't think it would be. I've got grandkids and great-grandkids that I'm thinking about in the future, you see.
These audio exclusives are made possible thanks to our member supporters. Please join our members now by making a one-time donation or by making it monthly. All the information is at lauraflanders.org. And thanks again to all of our member supporters.